So, yeah, I was just going to talk for about 10 minutes. My first question is anybody here vegan? If you're vegan, just raise your hand. Oh, good. The reason I say good is because I have a lot of vegan friends, and I like talking to vegans, but I think it's much more interesting to talk to people who are not vegan. Because when I talk to vegans, we just sort of agree with each other. And it's because when I was, up until the time I was 19 years old, I was a militant meat eater. And I had nothing but disdain for vegetarians and vegans. There was a woman in my high school class, and she refused to play softball because the mitt was made out of leather. And I just thought that was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. And I ate McDonald's, I ate Burger King, and my mom occasionally, because she was sort of like a dilettante spiritual person, and she would occasionally buy tofu and not know what to do with it. So it would like sit in the fridge like this strange foreign totem, and like I'd open the fridge and I'd look at it and be like, oh, please don't try and sneak it into something. And because she'd make chocolate chip cookies with like a little bit of tofu. And then when I was 19, I had this, for me, what was a very clear realization, which was when I was 10, I had been walking by my town dump, and I heard mewing coming from a little box. And I walked by the box, and I opened it up, and inside the box were 5 dead kittens and 1 barely alive kitten still with its eyes closed. And so I took this kitten, and I called up my mom, and we brought it to the vet, and the vet said, this cat is not going to live. Like, it's too young, it's too sick, it's separated from its mother. He's like, the best you can do is like keep it alive for a day or 2 and it will die. He's like, don't get attached to it. So we named it Tucker and we brought it home, and my grandmother's dachshund named George became this cat's mother and nursed it back to health. And Tucker went on to live to 21 years old. So when I was 19, I was playing with Tucker, and all of a sudden, something like the gears lined up, and I thought, you know, I would do anything in my power to keep Tucker from suffering. Like, I love this little cat, and like if someone tried to hurt him, I would lay down my life to protect this cat. And suddenly there was like this mental arithmetic. I was like, well, if you feel that way about this cat, how about other cats? And I was like, yeah, I like other cats. I would want them not to suffer. And then what about other mammals? And all of a sudden it dawned on me that I couldn't be a meat eater anymore, because I just simply couldn't be involved or condone a process that created suffering. And so that was a long time ago. That was like 25 years ago. And the trajectory of my veganism, for about a good 10 or 12 years, I maintained that I was the world's most militant, intolerant, annoying vegan. At one point, I considered not talking to other people if they weren't vegan. I wouldn't eat food that had been prepared in pots that had ever touched animal products. Like, I was awful. And I would yell at people who wore fur, and I would yell at people who ate meat. And then suddenly I realized, like, my intolerance and my militancy said nothing about this issue of veganism. It said everything about me and my own insecurities. So I realized that if I wanted people to respect my beliefs, in turn I have to respect their beliefs. So I'm still a vegan, and I still work as hard as I can on the cause of animal rights, but I do so hopefully with respect for people who disagree with me. Because I think if we can communicate with people who disagree with us in a respectful way, it increases the chances that we'll get through to them, and it increases the chances that we might actually learn from them. Like, for me, I had years where I was very presumptuous, and I wanted meat eaters to listen to me. And I didn't want to hear anything they had to say. You know, if they grew up in Argentina on the Pampas and they associate meat eating with their family, I didn't want to hear that. I was just like, you're still evil because you eat meat. And so now, I just put out a book recently called Gristle. And it's great because I didn't actually write any of it, but I can take credit for it. I rounded up all these experts in varying areas of animal production and looked at the ways in which factory farming and agribusiness hurt communities, hurt workers, hurt children, hurt the environment, and hurt the animals. And so we collected these essays and put them out not with the goal of being didactic and not with the goal of converting people to the cause of veganism, but simply presenting people with the facts behind factory farming. And that's, at present, that's sort of what I see my job in the world of animal rights as being. Not convincing people, but just respectfully presenting facts to them. And what was really interesting is doing the book tour for Gristle, how many facts about animal production people just aren't aware of. The biggest one that people were surprised by is, and I'm sure most people here know this, but the role of animal production in climate change, which is that animal production, according to the United Nations, is responsible for 25% of all climate change, which is more than every car, bus, truck, boat, plane on the planet. It's the #1 cause of deforestation in the rainforest. It's the #1 cause of water pollution in the United States. It decimates communities. It destroys people's health. I mean, it's hard for, I don't want to sound didactic, but in presenting these facts, some of the facts are so extreme that they do come across as didactic. But I do feel like the facts are out there, and I think it becomes incumbent upon us, if we're going to live reasonably self-aware lives, is to become aware of the consequences of our actions. And the people who who own the factory farms do everything in their power to make sure we don't know what goes on there. They put the factory farms as far away from consumers as possible. And they've done an amazing job of making sure that the people who eat animal products have no idea what the consequences are and how these products are produced and how they're going to affect them. And I also, before I go to taking your questions, because I'm really interested to hear what questions you might have, I have a lot of friends who are what I could call sentimental vegans, and I think that's great. For me, I think, relatively aware that life ends with death, and I don't think there's anything terribly wrong with dying. So when animals die, that doesn't really bother me, because death is unavoidable. What bothers me is unnecessary suffering, because suffering is avoidable. And I think it's, to use a big word, I think it's almost a sin that we electively and voluntarily inflict unspeakable suffering on thousands of billions of animals, because it's unnecessary and ends up poisoning us, poisoning the environment, and causing all this suffering in the process. And it was that suffering and my unwillingness to be involved in it that has led me to be a vegan and led me, I guess, to sitting here today. So I'd really be excited to hear any questions you guys might have. Yes, ma'am?
Sounds like the crux of it is that you're against commercial factory farming of animals, but what about, conversely, like the huge agricultural business that is just as unhealthy, but it's just involved in plants?
Well, the world of agribusiness and Monsanto and Frankencrops and all that is a very serious issue, and there are some really smart people dealing with it. I, years ago, decided that I want to do what I can to help animals, and I'm a dilettante to an extent. You know, I'm involved in a lot of different causes, but animal welfare is my primary concern. And unfortunately, there is a lot of overlap, because a lot of the companies who are running these huge factory farms are also running huge slaughterhouses and what have you. So, and they both do decimate the environment. But I don't know that much about that side of agribusiness. So I certainly can't say anything terribly knowledgeable about it. Any other questions?
About 3 more questions.
Oh, that's it? Did I ramble on that long?
Well, let's see how the questions go.
Oh man, I'm a loudmouth.
Good questions, guys.
Oh, how do you feel about animal products that are raised in a local, sustainable manner? Like, I have chickens where I live.
Mhm.
I eat their eggs. They're happy chickens.
Yeah.
They're not ever being slaughtered. Things like that. Or is the woman who has goats next to me?
Yeah, I live in New York City, so I don't have that much experience with humanely raised animals. My aunt and uncle got some chickens, and these chickens were laying eggs in the front seat of their car, behind the washer dryer. So my focus really is, again, on like factory farming and agribusiness. If someone came to me and said, oh, this is my backyard, here are some chickens, here's a cow, here's a goat, everybody gets along with each other, we play, I eat their eggs or their milk or whatever, far be it for me to criticize that. I mean, I'm a vegan, so I probably wouldn't eat the animal products that come from them, but I would be very uncomfortable criticizing you for having some chickens in your backyard who make eggs. You know, that would feel very presumptuous for me to be critical in that way. Yes?
Because there's a lot of information out there about this, where would you recommend that someone that's interested go to look and decide on whether it's the right fit?
Well, this is sort of like altruistic self-interest, because the book Gristle, we put it out through the New Press, which is a nonprofit book publishing company, and whatever money is generated from it goes to the Global Animal Partnership. So I lose money on it, but it is a pretty great resource. You know, it's factual, and it's got a really cute cover with a friendly cow on it, and it's got little like bar graphs and stuff. So if you're like me and you tend not to actually read the detailed text, you can look at the bar graph. So Gristle is a good place to go. I mean, the Humane Society their website is amazing. And there's a little controversy about the Humane Society because they do a lot of different things, but I think their heart is in the right place. And they've passed legislation that has helped literally hundreds of millions, if not billions, of animals. So Humane Society website is pretty great. Yes?
So you're a superstar. What do you think an average person can do other than being a vegan, joining PETA, helping the Humane Society? What could you do?
Well,
Be a big gesture if you really felt that it was your passion.
When we did the book tour for Gristle, one of the other facts that people were surprised by was the role of subsidies, federal subsidies in animal production. And if you removed all taxpayer subsidies, that go directly to these huge factory farms or these agribusiness companies, a pound of beef would cost about $30. And a family of four who went to McDonald's to get dinner would cost about $85 or $90. So the reason meat and animal products are so cheap is because all our federal tax money goes to subsidize them. So the number one thing I think anyone can do is just spend money in hopefully a fairly enlightened way. Be a sort of like compassionate, informed consumer, and support companies, whether big or small, who are good corporate citizens. But also lobbying Congress, lobbying your elected officials, because the agribusiness lobby is huge and incredibly powerful. But if we can just I almost feel like I want to side with like some of these crazy Tea Party people and say like, oh look, you want to end subsidies for different things. Let's talk about ending subsidies. Let's talk about fair market value applied to animal products. Let a pound of beef cost what it actually costs without subsidies. That does seem to be one of those issues that unfortunately libertarians shy away from. Yes?
What's the biggest challenge for you as being a vegan, and how did you deal with that?
Being a vegan now is pretty easy. Because the world has become so much more vegan friendly. 20 years ago, it was rough. Traveling was difficult everywhere, except for San Francisco, LA, Boulder, New York. A few places it was easy to be a vegan, but the rest of the world, almost impossible. And now there are health food stores and Whole Foods and vegetarian restaurants everywhere. Like you go to a tiny little town in Brazil and they have a vegan restaurant. There's still parts of the world where it's tricky. Eastern Europe is tricky. But the biggest challenge selfishly is feeling like an imposition upon my friends. I really hate going to people's dinner parties and you walk in and my presence makes them anxious. And I'm like, I don't care, eat, I'll just sit in the corner and chew on a napkin. But it's that, my presence feeling like an imposition. Because you come in, they're like, oh, well, the pasta salad's vegan. No, it's not, I put cheese on it. And then, and I'm like, I don't care, it's fine. I can go a few hours without eating. I'd rather just be here and not cause social anxiety for people. So, and still travel sometimes is tricky. And I live in New York, and every time I walk by one of those cheap pizza places. It's like a crystal meth addict walking by a meth lab, because it's like all I want to do is like relapse and go in and have 37 pieces of pizza, because I still maintain that like thin crust New York pizza was just like the tastiest thing on the planet. And I selfishly, it bothers me that like they can map the human genome, they can put a human on the moon, they can take subs to the Marianas Trench, and they can't make good vegan pizza. So I think in a truly perfect world, there would be like flawless vegan pizza. Oh, thanks.